Hello, everybody. Welcome to Medicine and Science on the Pod TV network, one of the few medical shows they're actually on any network. And the reason why is 20% of our gross domestic product is spent in healthcare. 20%. Yet, if you look at what's on TV, I bet you don't listen to 20% of what you listen to is in the area of healthcare. And what's happening right now is very important. It's the politicization of healthcare. It's almost like never happened at this level before, where all of a sudden, rather than science and medicine making decisions, politicians and lawyers are making decisions that don't know very much about medicine. So we do bring on somebody that everybody's following on the Pod TV network, Dr. Michael Patmos, who has his own, I call it, cult following. He's board certified in internal medicine, and he's a real medical doctor, other than the ones like the head of Health and Human Resources, who plays as a medical expert in Washington, D.C., but is not a medical expert. So without further ado, we'll bring in Dr. Michael Patmos to explain what's going on in the medical area. I like listening to you, Dr. Patmos, because I'd rather listen to you about healthcare than listen to RFK, who's an environmental attorney and has no background whatsoever in medicine. Unfortunately, he's head of Health and Human Services. So what's going on in the politics of medicine?
Well, good morning, Nick, and good morning, Rick. Good morning to all of the viewers. It's a privilege and a pleasure to be with you all today. I am an internal medicine doctor, board certified, have added qualifications in infection control and hospital epidemiology. And I've been a doctor for almost 45 years and spent a good half of my career in medical education, teaching medicine with medical students and interns and residents and my colleagues as well. So today, I would like to talk about the politicization of medicine in the United States. And I did some research for this presentation, and it is fascinating. What I have to share with you, I think you'll find very interesting. But first, before we do that, I just want to go back to something that we discussed last week, and that is the question, can we use evidence, epidemiological evidence, to predict what will happen if we stop vaccination? And the answer is yes, we absolutely can. You can't say to a person how many people will die, but the epidemiological modeling process is very complicated. This is what epidemiologists do. And we know without question that if we were to stop vaccinating for any given vaccine, we can predict pretty accurately how many people will be adversely impacted by that, including deaths. That's a very well-established principle. You don't have to tell the doctor. We know what's going to. If you don't vaccinate against tetanus, we know what's going to happen. You don't vaccinate against influenza and polio and measles, we know what's going to happen. And there are models that will reliably predict the outcome of those kinds of actions. Well, on to politicization of medicine. Well, it actually turns out that yes, we are in a very politicized environment now, but guess what? It's not new. The politicization of medicine dates back to the beginning of the country. In fact, in the 1700s, interestingly enough, the first area of politicization of medicine was around smallpox vaccination. There was an outbreak of smallpox, and a lot of people were against Jenner's smallpox vaccination. That was quite contentious. Religious groups really opposed it, and it really came to a head in the Revolutionary War when George Washington mandated that the Revolutionary Army be vaccinated against smallpox. And in fact, it may well have contributed. That decision may well have contributed to the new United States being successful against England. Because smallpox, I mean, it's pretty hard to fight a war when your soldiers are breaking out in pustules and dying. So that was the first politicized situation. And it's interesting, the very first thing that happened in the United States was the politicization around vaccination. And here we are today with politicization around vaccination. In the mid-1800s, there was a lot of politics in medicine over turf wars. Who has the right to be a doctor? And the licensing of physicians. Prior to that time, basically anybody could claim to be a doctor or a healer. Then in the late 1800s, the politicization moved into the realm of abortion. In 1873, the Comstock Act restricted abortion and for the first time began to legislate morality. In the early 1900s, as vaccination became more well developed, there was the introduction of compulsory vaccination laws, including the Supreme Court decision of Jacobson versus Massachusetts that affirmed the right of the state to mandate vaccination for healthcare workers. In the early 1910s, the Flexner Report just shredded the state of healthcare in the United States, saying the lack of professionalism was a problem. And it was because of the Flexner Report that we created actually professionalism in healthcare. The American Board of Surgery, the American Board of Internal Medicine, these kinds of organizations evolved because of the political environment at that time, recognizing that we had a lot of quacks, and it was time to professionalize and standardize medical education and medical licensure. In the 1930s, there was a eugenics movement in the United States around sterilization. This was a very politicized area, and the government actually interceded to determine who was fit and who was unfit to reproduce. And we began in those days to force sterilization on people. Interestingly, Black Americans were the target of this because they were unfit to reproduce. In the 1940s, the Hill-Burton law came into effect, which the federal government began funding the construction of hospitals. But interestingly enough, many of these hospitals were segregated. They were white-only hospitals. And it turns out, well, that's pretty much a political intervention in healthcare. But then in the 60s, with the creation of Medicare and Medicaid, the hospitals were desegregated. Of course, in late 60s, around 1970, Roe v. Wade, a very intensely debated and politicized thing that really tore the country apart for decades and is still tearing the country apart because Roe v. Wade was recently overturned. In the 1980s, HIV was a very politicized thing. There was a lot of folks who wanted to say that we shouldn't try to save or stop HIV because these people were all drug addicts and homosexuals, and somehow they deserve this. In around 2000, stem cell research got very politicized. Around 2010, opioids became very politicized. Much of the opioid epidemic was prompted by congressional actions, medicalization that pushed physicians to prescribe with the pain as the fifth vital sign program. Also, if you recall, we had end-of-life politicization with the movement toward euthanasia being very heavily politicized. And then, of course, with President Obama, the Affordable Care Act was intensely politicized. Also emerging around that time was transgender rights and transgender medicine. As you should know, there are all sorts of folks who are born in intersex states. They're neither male nor female, and or both, or neither. And, these people have rights too. And that's where the whole field of transgender medicine evolved. But there's no question that now we're probably in the most politicized medical environment ever. And it has to do with COVID. And who is the heavyweight champion of the world when it comes to politicizing healthcare? Dr. Donald Trump. And how did Trump become the heavyweight champion? And I emphasize heavyweight, the heavyweight champion of the world of politicization. Well, it started with COVID because he intentionally downplayed, from the very beginning, he downplayed the significance of the pandemic. If you recall, it was Trump who said that it was no big deal. It was all going to go away. We're going to have next to zero deaths. Meanwhile, privately, he was telling people like Bob Woodward that it was going to be really bad, but he was lying to the American public because he wanted to play it down. He then promoted false treatments like hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin and bleach. Everybody, I'm sure you remember him. The bleach comment got more public attention than anything that came out of the medical research. He also encouraged states to resist infection control practices. I mean, he came right out and disparaged infection control doctors and infection control experts, removed them from positions of influence, and I mean, he took his mask off with disdain and encouraged people to disregard infection control practices and to disregard stay-at-home orders, and criticized requiring children to be vaccinated at school. All of this was for one reason only. He wanted to try to prop himself up politically, so that because he knew COVID was going to hurt him in his reelection bid. So he decided to intervene and politicize this pandemic for his benefit only. To hell with what happens to the American people. Well, as a result of his actions, not surprisingly, death from COVID was excessive compared to what it could have been. There is very good evidence reported in multiple medical journals and multiple studies, including the Commonwealth Foundation, that at least 300,000 or more, perhaps as many as 400,000 Americans died needlessly as a result of Trump's medicalization of COVID. 300,000 unnecessary deaths. Interestingly, those deaths were aggregated more in Republican districts, in Republican zip codes. Trump hurt his own party more than the other side. It led to a decline in vaccination, which we're seeing accelerating now. People are rejecting vaccination across the board. And it also led to a severe erosion of trust in public health and in expertise. We hear a lot today about, well, the public has lost trust. Well, the reason why they've lost trust is we had a president who eroded that trust. And this has all led to the rise of the anti-vax fake expert. There was a time when these fake experts were fringe voices. Now they are running things. They are in charge. We have people in charge who not only, it'd be one thing if they were had legitimate credentials, but they were just skeptics or contrarians. But no, we have people in charge now whose credentials are fake, whose resumes are made up with fake positions, fake appointments, fake accomplishments that don't exist. We have frauds working in the government now. So that's where this has all led. The politicization of medicine in the United States has led to empowering quacks to run the country and run down public health in this country, to the extent that now you can't get, the government's not paying for Paxlovid anymore. I just spoke to a friend of mine yesterday who has COVID and wanted to get Paxlovid. It's going to cost him $1,700 for a 5-day prescription. And it has led to sources, in well-placed sources, knowledgeable sources, said yesterday that RFK will outlaw all mRNA vaccination in the United States. That's cancer, COVID, other viral infections. All mRNA will be removed from the United States by RFK within a month, according to stories that from well-placed sources that broke last night. This would deny the American people a Nobel Prize-winning innovation. It will force all of the people who are involved in producing mRNA vaccination, whether it's for cancer or whatever, to move overseas, to move abroad. We will translocate this important innovative capacity that we have for science and innovation across the pond to Europe and elsewhere. It'll benefit the rest of the world, and it will mean the United States takes a giant step backward into 2 centuries back. You want to go back to the 1800s? Time machine, here we go. We're going back. Thank you to the heavyweight champion of medicalization, of politicization of healthcare. So that's what I've got for you all today, and I'd love to have a little chit chat about it.
Last week on the show, there was another guest who said that the claim that if we scuttle our vaccination system, tens of thousands, which is pretty conservative, of Americans will die unnecessarily. And this guest said, well, that's speculative. We don't have the data. We have the freaking data. In the 1800s in the U.S., life expectancy was 38 to 40 years old. In the year 1900, life expectancy, 42 years old. And it's not because people drop dead at 40. It's because one kid in 1800, about half of all kids didn't make it to age 5. In the year 1900, 1 out of 4 kids didn't make it to age 5. And so, and right now, 0.7 kids, 0.7% of kids, one kid in 150 doesn't make it to age 5 because of better sanitation and because of vaccination. We have the data that.
Well, doctors know some things. I've been taking care of people for nearly half a century. I know that if you don't give tetanus shots, someone's going to get tetanus. And if you've ever seen tetanus, it's usually fatal. I know that if you get rabies and you don't get prophylactic, treatment for rabies shots, you're going to die. It's about a 99.9% fatal disease. You don't have to. Doctors know these things. This is what we do for a living. You're right, Rick. But there's another thing. It just dawned on me. You know how they always, Kennedy and the other anti-vaxxers say, well, we don't have any control studies. Well, we do have a controlled study in a way, placebo-controlled study. Look at the Amish and other religious groups that don't vaccinate their children. If vaccines cause autism, then there should be no autism in those groups that don't vaccinate their children. Well, guess what? The rate of autism is the same in the Amish as it is in the unvaccinated Amish children as it is in other children. So it just doesn't hold up. So there's a natural experiment right there. If you think vaccines cause autism, well, go look at the Amish. They don't vaccinate, and they have just the same amount of autism. So there you go.
All right. So RFK, I assume, is wanting to pull the mRNA vaccines because he says they're dangerous. I assume that's his frickin' deal. You know what's dangerous is pancreatic cancer, which the 5-year survival rate for pancreatic is like 10%, 12%. There's a new mRNA vaccine that's in phase 2 trials or something. Maybe phase 1. I don't know. Anyway, in early trials, it kills the pancreatic cancer in half of the people who had a death frickin' sentence. I'm sure people with pancreatic cancer would rather have the minuscule risk of mRNA than have the absolute death sentence of this cancer.
I have diagnosed and taken care of many patients with pancreatic cancer over the years, probably 100 people in the course of my career. I've seen a lot of pancreatic cancer. That is a disease that, it's if you're diagnosed with pancreatic cancer that has spread, you've got basically 3 months, and it's just relentless. We throw all kinds of stuff at it, and you can prolong life by a little bit, but for the most part, pancreatic cancer, once it has spread, is really dismal. That's a disease that if I ever got that, I'd say, well, my ticket has been punched. I'm gonna sell the farm now because there's no going back. The only thing that has surprised me with pancreatic cancer is in localized pancreatic cancer. It's astonishing what pancreatic surgeons can do now. I have seen patients cured of pancreatic cancer because of early identification and surgery by really good pancreatic surgeons. Oh, by the way, Dr. Marty Makary is a very good pancreatic surgeon. He has probably saved a lot of people with stage 1 early pancreatic cancer. He should continue to do that and stay out of the vaccine business. In any case, or the anti-vax business. In any case, pancreatic cancer, you're right, Rick, is a awful disease. And the only cure is early surgical intervention. And that requires this very complicated, ridiculously difficult surgery that's only done in major academic medical centers. It's a mess, but it can save your life. But we have a vaccine here that's in the stages of being tested that could dramatically change life expectancy for people with pancreatic cancer. And Robert Kennedy is going to take that away from the American people.
And so you get a diagnosis and you know about the vaccine. Now you have to try to sneak into Canada, get over to the UK, and then plead with doctors over there, give me the mRNA vaccine. It's going to create Americans like a just fleeing, looking for the cure that should be available here.
You know, this could be really good for other countries. I was reading that some of the vaccine companies are looking at relocating. Obviously, they already are in Europe, but they're going to move more of their activities over to Europe. But actually, there's a lot of interest in developing these industries in Africa. So there may be some real benefit to this, to the United States stupidity to ruin our capacity to do these innovations will be to the benefit of other parts of the world. This could be a real good thing for other countries, particularly poorer countries that may now begin to invest. Maybe we will now invest in pharmaceutical industry and vaccine technology in other parts of the world that could benefit other parts of the world. So
one more thing about pancreatic. Pancreatic is, what makes it bad is it doesn't cause symptoms until it's already stage 4. It's already spread. So most people don't catch it. Ruth Bader Ginsburg got 20 years because she caught hers early. If you can at all, like, talk, if you're in your 50s, I'm a hypochondriac, and I persuaded my doctors to give me an MRI of my abdomen for no good reason. I had no symptoms of anything. They found a little kidney cancer, another cancer that's highly treatable if it's in your kidney. If it gets out of your kidney, you're screwed. But they found mine early, pre-symptoms, got rid of it. If you do this, if you can get your pancreas scanned, you can catch it before it will turn into this super deadly thing.
You made a very good point. The presentation of pancreatic cancer varies depending upon the location of the cancer. If the cancer is in the head of the pancreas, that's a very busy area. The bile duct is there, the pancreatic duct. So if a tumor develops there, you'll get jaundice. And so the first symptom is jaundice. And so people may actually have a chance of surgical resection. If it's in the tail of the pancreas, way over on the left side, the first presentation is metastatic disease. You don't know you have anything until the cancer seeds all over your peritoneum, basically all over your belly, and your belly starts to expand and grow as it fills with fluid. Those patients are done in 2 to 3 months. I remember vividly one patient, really cool guy I took care of. I really loved him. He was a long-term patient. He came in, he said, "Hey, my belt is tight. I don't know what's going on. My belly is swelling." I did a CT scan at the time. Bingo, he had cancer of the tail of the pancreas. And I referred him to oncology. They treated him. And after a couple of months, he knew he wasn't going to get better. And he came in to see me and he said, "Thanks, doc. I just want to thank you, but my time is up. I'm leaving now. And I just want to thank you." And he said goodbye to me and to his family. And he was dead in a week.
Wow. Well, the problem I have with the mRNA vaccine being taken away from the United States, it's like, why don't they pass a law to eliminate computer chips in the United States? In other words, I think computer people understand that those things can be highly toxic and highly dangerous. So why don't we just eliminate computer chips in the United States and see what happens? You're taking away a tool that could be very useful, and you're allowing the other countries like the European Union, et cetera, to be able to use that tool, develop patents, and enforce patents internationally, because I know they'll have a lot of their research done here in the European Union. And these people will develop patents on some great ideas. And then ultimately, the American people are going to be paying the European Union royalties for the ideas that were developed in.
Yeah, you make a very good point. I was just a couple of years ago, I think end of 2023, I was in Boston. I took a continuing education course at Harvard Medical School, and they made the point that mRNA technology is one of the 5 most important advances in healthcare in recent memory. One of 5 of the most important advances. And here, Robert Kennedy, who's not a doctor, is going to take that advance away from the American people. And where is he getting his ideas from? Robert Kennedy doesn't invent these things he didn't make this up in his own head. He's relying on others to feed him information. And the question I have asked is, where does Kennedy get his information about messenger RNA vaccines? Who is in his ear? Who is Kennedy listening to? That's the question that needs to be opened up to public understanding.
Mhm.
So I just looked it up. I had heard that RFK Jr. doesn't believe in germs,
Yes.
but it's not exactly that. He says in testimony before Congress, he said he believes in germs, but that they're harmless if you have a healthy lifestyle,
Right.
which
Yeah.
is some kind of bullshit. That's the deal where it's blame the victim if you get sick.
Right.
Well, everybody gets sick eventually. And it's not because they were eating too much white bread. It's people, bodies break down, and you need to treat that. RFK wants our food to be healthier, and that is not going to save us from cancer.
Yeah. The idea that the bacteria are harmless, it's just your state of health that allow tell that to somebody with smallpox or cellulitis or an abscess or go get meningococcal meningitis and see what happens if you don't treat it. It is stupidity beyond, but for a physician who's been teaching medicine for nearly half a century, these are people that would never have even gotten into medical school, let alone been able to make rounds with me. And now they're telling me what to do. It's mind-boggling. It's time to go.
Yeah, I think it's time for RFK to go.
Passport and join Nick in Spain.
Yeah. Well, Spain's great, but I get the advantage of both systems. But our RFK leading Health and Human Resources is an absolute joke. I'm betting that he will not be around in 3 years or less because no one's going to reappoint him. That's for sure. And he may not even make it for the 3 years.
But by the way, RFK his skin tone is unhealthy. It looks like he's about to have a stroke. But with his shirt off, frickin' RFK looks great because he abuses testosterone. He admits it. He's 70 years old. He's got big, meaty pecs because he's pumping himself full of to a dangerous level of testosterone. Also, he was addicted to heroin for 18 years. This guy is a mess. And
well, that's what I'm saying. He may not be around for 3 years. I mean, look at Hulk Hogan. I mean, the people that abuse themselves eventually pass away. But why they're passing away, as opposed to making everybody watching our network pass away because they're not getting proper medical care, we're going to go till next week. So I want to thank our viewers in the United States and, of course, around the world for tuning in to Medicine and Science, only on the Pod TV network. And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Peace, Ringo.